I think people are cucking my sports takes, and that's okay. Whether they are or they're not, the good thing for them is I don't cuck back. I'm just gonna make new takes. Thanks for watching the Shonee Jackson Show. This is episode 10. Excited to say that. Like, subscribe, follow, do everything I ask every single time. If you like my show, become a part of it by being a subscriber and follow me by the socials on the socials rather. But today, a college football day. I love it. I've got a lot to talk about. Camp is starting around the country or has already started for every team around the country. You got practice reports coming in and out, expectations, preseason hype, preseason award watch list. For what that means, it really means nothing, but it's fun to talk about. And I have a sports podcast, so we're definitely going to talk about it. And just a little bit of everything. I'm going to talk about the Longhorns camp, season expectations, camp reports from the first few days of practice, standouts, players that we need to break out that haven't yet, and just really the loaded roster and why I and many others have such high expectations on my Longhorns. And then going to talk about Oklahoma as well. The opposite effect, right? Their over under win total, the fan reaction to record predictions and things like that, and why I think the Oklahoma expectations exist the way they do and are what they are going into year three under Brent Venables in the first year heading into the SEC, right? And then after that, I'm going to finish the show talking about two different quarterbacks, Dillon Gabriel and Cam Ward. Dillon Gabriel, on one hand, I think is a very overhyped quarterback, and why I believe that, and why I believe that some of that Oregon steam coming into this year, as far as expectations and momentum, may die off during the season because of Dillon Gabriel. And on the other side of that, I have already mentioned picking Quinn Ewers as my Heisman Trophy winner, number one overall pick in the draft. Speaking of what I said at the beginning of the show, people cucking my takes, I know that that's not crazy given his Heisman odds are what they are, and yet a lot of people have been giving negative undertones on Quinn Ewers of their expectations of him all year long. Get a couple days into practice, and now people are picking him to win the Heisman like I did, right? Is it really cucking? Are they really watching my show and taking my takes? Probably not. Maybe it's just good football minds and football guys think alike, right? So let's get right into it. Fall camp has started, or whatever it is that they call it these days. I'm going to continue to call it fall camp. The Longhorns have had their first few practices, and it has kicked off with a bang, with a lot of expectations, momentum, hype from the Longhorns beat reporters and people that cover the team, as well as the fans diving into some of the clips we've seen. And, already the expectations have been high. So I think what I want to start with today is the Texas Longhorns running game. The running game is going to be maybe the key factor, and really is always the key factor of any Steve Sarkisian offense, knowing Sark, his philosophy, his schemes, and play calling over the entirety of his career, right? But this Texas Longhorns running game is going to be the best it's had yet since he's been here. Why? First and foremost, let's start with the offensive line. It is going to be arguably the best offensive line in the country. Them, LSU, maybe a few others that are in that conversation. I think Texas has every chance to be the most dominant offensive line unit in the SEC and even the nation. So that alone is going to heighten your running game. Let's talk about the running backs. CJ Baxter has come into camp per Justin Wells with the lower body of an NFL running back, right? He says he has the lower body of a 240-pound NFL running back. Justin Wells, inside Texas, on three, the very best in the business. I've been reading Justin Wells, Jerry Hamilton, all of these guys that are involved there, their reports and their writings and watching their content since I've been about 11 years old. So obviously I respect these guys a lot. A lot of the inside information I get on the University of Texas is on their website, 24/7, Rivals, and what have you. But I think Jerry Hamilton, Justin Wells, and those guys are the best in the business. He says that he has the lower body of a 240-pound running back. I said on my show a few weeks ago when talking about him and the running game and what I saw in the spring, he looked like Cedric Benson in the spring game, running dudes over, running around guys. Looked like an All-American running back, potential Doak Walker winner type guy, first round draft pick. That's what Cedric Baxter is. He was the number one running back coming out of the country, out of high school. Last year he played a lot and contributed a lot as a true freshman. He actually won the job over Jonathan Brooks, who was RB1 in this past NFL draft. Jonathan Brooks would have won the Longhorns back-to-back Doak Walker awards if he didn't end up tearing his ACL against TCU. He was totally running away with the award and far and above the best running back in the country. Stand by that going into his rookie year in the NFL. Well, it's easy to forget with the year he had and going on to get drafted where he got drafted that Cedric Baxter beat him out and was the starter to start the season, the starter going into that Alabama game. He got kind of like a hip flexor or something. I don't quite remember. I believe it was a hip flexor, an injury that held him out a little bit in that Alabama game. Understanding the fact that Cedric Baxter comes out of Orlando, Florida, and Florida public school systems where that is an NFL hotbed, if it's not the NFL hotbed, as far as producing NFL and Hall of Fame caliber football talent across the country, competing with Texas, California, Louisiana, Ohio, and states like that, right? That might be the hotbed. And yet, those Florida public schools, I've said it many times, many others talk about it, they don't have the off-season program, the coaching that schools here in the state of Texas, maybe California, or maybe the private schools in Florida, Louisiana have, right? It's a lot of volunteer coaching. There is no off-season program. So that huge freakish frame that he showed up in was his natural frame. Well, now Cedric Baxter has an entire offseason of lifting in a college football program, strength and conditioning unit, getting fed like a man, and you're going to start to see this season that strength and explosion. I think as a true sophomore, Cedric Baxter is going to be the best running back in America, right? I think they got the best offensive line in America with the best running back in America. And I'm not the only one saying that. Who else has said that? The greatest coach of all time, Nick Saban. Nick Saban at SEC Media Day said he's the best running back he saw last season when he played him coaching Alabama, and he said that he was the best running back that he saw all spring when watching running backs across the country and running schemes, running games across the country in spring practices, right? Obviously, he made his way to Texas. His relationship with Sarkisian is very good, well documented, was well documented there at SEC Media Days. Sark spoke very highly of Saban. Saban spoke very highly of Sark. He said that Cedric Baxter is the best running back he saw all spring, right? You put that to go along with the offensive line they have. Obviously, the running game is going to be explosive and very, very good, God willing that he stays healthy. That said, the guys standing behind him aren't nothing to sneeze at. Jaden Blue was put on the preseason Paul Hornung award watch list, right? Let me see if I had that pulled up. Here we go. Preseason named Jaden Blue, Paul Hornung award watch list. Now, I'm not a guy that's going to sit here and act like preseason award watch lists mean everything in the world. They do not. And yet, that's your backup running back getting put on this watch list. That's your backup running back that had some very good games. I don't know what his yards per carry average is over his career, but I promise you it's very high. It seems like every time he touches the ball, he may score. Very explosive, fast running back, like a 10-2 track runner on a 100-meter dash. He skipped his senior year of high school, and it really dropped his ranking, or he skipped his senior season of high school, not his senior year academically, but he skipped his senior season of high school football, and it really dropped his rankings dramatically across the recruiting boards in America, or the recruiting sites in America. And yet, we often forget he was the number one running back in the state that year, and one of the top running backs in the nation for a reason. He comes in, he sits behind guys like Bijan Robinson, Roschon Johnson, and then you got C.J. Baxter that comes in and kind of passes him up at Jonathan Brooks last year. So he was a guy that was kind of looked at as potential transfer, maybe falling behind others. Is he going to find his way? And boy, did he. He got his opportunities, and he never looked back. He's another starting running back caliber guy. He's going to get starting running back type of targets and carries this year because he's that type of player, and the scheme is going to fit him that way. And Sark's going to find ways to get his guys to football, right? So there's nothing to sneeze at with him. And then you got five-star Jarrett Gibson and Trey Wisner sitting behind him, chomping at the bit to play themselves. So, you got a completely loaded running back room with arguably the best running back coach in the country, especially when we're talking recruiting, in Tashard Choice, former Dallas Cowboy Tashard Choice, right? So the running back room is incredibly explosive, looks good through the first few days of camp. I know we haven't put the pads on, but just eye test alone, pairing that with the offensive line to go with it. Can't wait to see that running game. The running game to go along with my Quinn Ewers Heisman predictions, that's probably the biggest reason I predict that. The running game is going to make this passing attack with the fast, elite wide receiver unit that we have so easy. Because if we're averaging 6 yards a carry against some of the best defenses in the nation in the SEC week in, week out, I think we have the ability to do that type of shit. The passing game and the explosive out of that, that's why I'm talking about 2020 Alabama, where Sark was the offensive coordinator. That's why I make those comparisons. Because I think this running game is going to be a force of nature. Right. Let's move on to some other things. Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, maybe the most important pieces in this fall camp to stand out and make their way as the next big time interior defensive lineman at the University of Texas. First and foremost, I said it on the last show, I'll say it again. It's very important to realize and understand that a year ago, T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy had never started a game at the University of Texas before that Rice game to start the season a year ago. The year before that, our defensive tackles had never started a game before that season had begun at the University of Texas. Sorry, I'm getting a little scatterbrained looking at things. But Keandre Colburn the year before, that was his first year starting at Texas. After that, T'Vondre Sweat and Byron Murphy, their first year starting. And now, Alfred Collins, Vernon Broughton. First and foremost, that's a big boy position. It takes years to develop the strength, to develop the pad level in your body frame and explosiveness to be able to use that and weaponize it while being an athlete, right? These two players were recruited as highly as anybody in the country. Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton alike could have picked up the phone when they were coming out of high school and played for any team in America. They chose to play for Texas. Alfred Collins is a five-star freaking nature of an athlete. This guy could have played basketball, could have played football. He moves like a receiver, and he's built like Bigfoot. Okay? So Alfred Collins, I think, has the potential to be as good as he wants to be. Same with Vernon Broughton. Vernon Broughton's built like fucking Fletcher Cox. The longest arms you're going to see. He's got go-go gadget arms. He's very strong in a big frame, a frame to really dominate in the interior. So I think those guys with the development from Bo Davis prior and now Kenny Baker inserting in where he specializes in developing interior defensive linemen. I mean, Kenny Baker was only the interior defensive line coach for Vance Joseph in Miami last year. Vance Joseph's probably the best defensive coordinator in the NFL, and he's definitely the best at coaching interior defensive linemen. So I don't think a guy like Kenny Baker gets a job coaching for Vance Joseph and coaching interior defensive linemen if he doesn't know what the fuck he's doing, right? So I have all the confidence in the world that the Longhorns are going to be just fine in the interior with guys like Alfred Collins and Vernon Broughton, right? And the only thing that could help them as well is the linebackers behind them. We had good linebacker play a year ago. Ford got drafted, and he played very well for multiple years as a starter, and it was good, right? Lots of turnovers, great in coverage, good in the run game. But now we got an all-world freak in Anthony Hill Jr. And then you got Benda starting next to him, David Benda starting next to him, who has started and played a lot of football at the University of Texas, going into a super senior type season for him, going into his season to prove himself to get drafted into the NFL. So with Anthony Hill Jr., who may be the most talented linebacker that the University of Texas has ever had, and I don't say that lightly, Derek Johnson being my favorite player maybe ever at the University of Texas, he's the best guy we've had since Derek Johnson, right? And I think he's going to have a Derek Johnson type impact. I think Anthony Hill Jr. is not only going to be an All-American at the University of Texas, All SEC, bring home awards, but he's going to be a top 5 to top 10 draft pick in the NFL 2 years from now. He's going to be a 3 and out top 10 draft pick conservatively as long as he stays healthy, and I think he will. I think he's built for it. So, the run defense in itself is going to be very good, and I'm very confident in that. Nick Saban at SEC Media Days talked about the corner play. Well, I think the corner play is going to be very good as well. I think with a guy like Malik Muhammad, he has the potential to be a Thorpe Award, all SEC, potential All-American guy himself starting this year, cousin of Jabbar Muhammad. He's also had many, many family members play in the NFL. He comes from an NFL family in an area of the world where they produce NFL defensive backs. Shout out to Oak Cliff. Shout out to Dallas, Texas. Manny Muhammad is expected to have a breakout year that's different than just being a good starter. He's expected to have the breakout year to be one of the best cornerbacks in America, right? You add to that our pass rush is gigantically improved with Trey Moore and Colin Simmons coming into the play. Colin Simmons is working with the threes right now, as you would expect a true freshman to do so, but you're bringing back Barron Sorrell, Ethan Burke. You got the development of the other kid out of Westlake, Colton Vasek, and others that have been in the program. The pass rush is going to be dramatically improved. And so when your pass rush is improved, your cornerback play is going to be improved. Go look at the NFL, look at any teams in college. The best cornerback units probably usually have a top 5 to top 10 pass rushing unit. If you could get to the quarterback in under 3 seconds or 3.5 seconds, then it's a lot easier to get aggressive as a defensive back and just, quite frankly, play defensive back in general and not get beat, right? Routes take a little bit of time to develop. And if you don't have that time to let them develop, you're not going to really have to worry about the secondary. That's to go along with really smart safeties that have already played, like Michael Taft and Derek Williams. I've said many times that I think Derek Williams is going to be one of the best safeties in the SEC. Then you bring in a transfer like Andrew Makuba, who started 3 years at Clemson, was a freshman All-American. He's a hometown kid from LBJ. You know what I mean? We got so much proven talent there already. You bring in a guy like Javian Cole to play at cornerback if he can step up. If a young player like Kobe Black, who was recruited as a 5-star, could have picked up the phone and played for anybody in America himself, who's to say he doesn't develop and play as fast as Malik Muhammad did? Going into the spring last year, Malik Muhammad wasn't expected to be a starter as a true freshman. Yes, he was highly recruited. Yes, we knew he was going to be very good, but he became a starter because he was forcing turnovers every single day in practice. Whether it was punching balls out, being a physical corner in the run game, or after the ball was caught by receivers and forcing fumbles or getting interceptions, he made plays every day and in every scrimmage. Will there be young corners that do that? Which players will do that? Then you got Jahdae Barron. Will he play more safety this year? Will he play more outside corner, or will he go back to his star role? Can Jalen Gilbo fill that star role as he's developed over a few years at the University of Texas? I believe, just based off what I've heard coaches say in their interviews, that he's been developing very well. He's got the frame to do it. He's got the speed to do it. If he can take over that star role, and Makuba and Jahdae Barron can play more outside corner and safety, then this secondary is going to be just fine, right? And then there's the question, who will have the helmet comms? Will it be a safety? Will it be Anthony Hill Jr.? Is Anthony Hill Jr. ready to do that mentally and process everything as fast as he needs to, get guys ready, and still play like Waterboy? Will it be Michael Taft? Could Derek Williams do it? We'll see. I think they're all working with helmet comms in them and throughout camp. I'm interested to see who ends up taking on that responsibility. So that's the defensive side of the ball. I wanted to start there because the offensive side of the ball is easy. We got 11 starters and depth that are going to play in the NFL on that offensive side of the ball. Okay, let's talk about the offensive line again. Kyle Flood, talking about the deep depth on the team, returning experience to go along with it. Texas on the front includes an All-American candidate in Kelvin Banks Jr. Kelvin Banks is the type of guy that could get drafted number 1 overall in the NFL draft. 3-year starter Hayden Conner at left guard. 4-year starter Jake Majors at the center spot. 2-year starter and DJ Campbell, another former 5-star future first-round type draft pick at the right guard. And new right tackle and massive 6'5", 340-pound mauler from Duncanville, Texas, Cam Williams. That's just 5 guys. We're 7 to 9 deep on that offensive line, right? Kyle Flood said we've got 7 or 8 guys, maybe 9, who could play competitively in games for us, Flood said. So does that mean I'm comfortable with those guys? Well, yeah, I guess it does to some degree. But I've got really high expectations for those players that will play at a higher level this year than we did last year, right? There's a guy in Cole Hudson that started an entire season as a true freshman that's backing up guys like DJ Campbell, Hayden Conner, and even Jake Majors at center. He's going to rotate in and play because he's a very good football player. He would start for most teams in the conference and around the country, right? Michigan a year ago had 7 guys drafted from their offensive line. That's the type of offensive line the University of Texas has this year. This is the reason, and I'm going to talk about it later, but people like myself and others that aren't even Longhorns fans talk about the program that Sark has built and project dominance over the course of the next decade plus, because the Longhorns roster right now, conservatively speaking, from freshmen to seniors already on campus, has about 30 to 35 NFL football players on it. And that's only going to grow as the years go on through high school recruiting and transfer portal recruiting that we do, right? Let's move forward. Quinn Ewers and the QBs. Quinn and Arch Manning could both lead this team to an SEC title. Both of them. They're both ready to do so. Quinn's in year 3 in the system. Arch is in year 2 of the system. 2 of the best quarterbacks in America on the same team in the same quarterback room behind this offensive line, right? Behind them, you got Trey Owens, who had a magnificent spring game. We think very, very highly of him. I think that he's going to develop under Sark for 2 to 3 years, step in, and be a first-round draft pick like Mac Jones was at Alabama. right? Sark said Quinn Ewers looks like a quarterback that's in year 3 of a system that is very confident and he has all the talent of the world. If you hear Sark speak on Quinn at any point in this offseason, he's speaking on a guy and speaking with the tonality of a coach that thinks he has a quarterback that's going to go absolutely and completely gangbusters this season. And I think so too. I've already predicted he'd win the Heisman and be the number 1 overall pick in the NFL draft. I prefaced with the running game. I prefaced with the offensive line and the weapons that this team has for a reason before I started with him. But starting with him, he's a generational talent that seems to be clicking and processing between the ears as well. Right? So if he's clicked and processed and continues to develop with that side of the game and the footwork side of the game, which I promise you he has, and I've already seen that he has, what do you guys think is going to happen? He's going to have, in my opinion, by far the greatest season a quarterback has ever had at the University of Texas, and he would have done that already a year ago if he didn't have to miss games. But this year, he's going to stomp all over that, and he might have one of the greatest seasons you've ever seen in the SEC or ever in general. If you have the best offensive line unit in America, you potentially have the best running unit in America, the best running game. Then you got weapons like Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden, Jonte Cook, all-world receiver, and Ryan Wingo, who seems like he's going to take somebody's spot, one of those guys I just mentioned. You know, DeAndre Moore going into his second year. The list goes on and on at the receiver position. Tight end and Gunnar Helm, who we anticipate has a very big year. What the fuck do you guys think's going to happen? I already read to you last week his game logs against big teams. Quinn Ewers plays his biggest games again in the biggest games. The misconception that he struggles because he started slow versus Washington is just lazy. You haven't actually watched the games that he played in. The Oklahoma game, he finished with like 31 straight completions. He did something similar to that against Washington, almost brought us back to win that game. All right? Quinn Ewers is the man, and he's going to go crazy. We got 5-star decisions coming up for the University of Texas. Let me see if I can pull that up real quick on Twitter for you. 5-star on the recruiting scale. You got multiple 5-stars making their decisions or their verbal decisions this month. You got Jonah Williams, Michael Fusasi, the left tackle. What's his name? The receiver, Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, and others to name a few. Those guys are all announcing this month. Texas has a great chance with all of them. Can they make a clean sweep? Can they get 2 of 5, 3 of 5? My prediction is they get at least 3 of 5 commitments out of those guys. And let me see it on Twitter real quick. Hold up. Just give me a second. Let me pull up my Twitter. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. And now I got it pulled up. 23 minutes in. We're solid. Go to my profile. But anyhow, there's 5 decisions in the recruiting world coming up on the University of Texas. And I will give you my predictions on how those go and whether they commit to Texas now or not, whether I think they are going to play for the University of Texas. I just want to get their names right. Here we go. Make sure the sound's off on this. You got Jonah Williams, Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, Michael Terry, and Michael Fusasi. Michael Terry was the one I was drawing a blank on. So let's start at the top. Jonah Williams, the number 1 athlete in America, the 10th overall player in the country. I think he'll play safety at Texas, but he can play on the offensive side of the ball as well. This is a player that, like, Texas has been counted out on the entirety of the recruitment. And that's, there's been times throughout his recruitment where Oklahoma was favored, and then it seemed like A&M was going to be the spot. And now I think it's coming down between Texas and LSU. I think it is a very, very tight race, but I think Texas is going to win out on Jonah Williams for multiple reasons. This is a player that was expected to possibly be a high draft pick in the MLB draft. I guess he wasn't drafted as high as he possibly could have been. So now he's made the decision that he's going to go ahead and come to college and play both football and baseball. Well, Texas has a card in their pocket that LSU does not. LSU and Texas are the two greatest college baseball programs of all time. LSU has more recent success than Texas does on the baseball field, but Texas making the hire of Jim Schlossnagle is the needle mover in this recruitment, in my opinion. I think not only being the home state and closer to home for Jonah Williams, and maybe the state where his father and and the team that his father and other family members want him to go for a little bit, that plays a factor, but the biggest role being I think he trusts Schlossnagle and he trusts the football unit at Texas and the program in the direction of the football program more than he will LSU when this decision comes time to make. And therefore, I think Jonah Williams will ultimately decide to make a decision to go play his football and baseball career here in Austin, Texas at the University of Texas. On to Jamie French, another he's from the state of Florida. It's going to come down to Texas and Miami from what I've heard. Number 4 receiver in the country, number 18 overall player, 5-star receiver. I think Texas wins out on Jamie French. I think he's been leaning Texas for a long time. Miami's going to make a compelling pitch and already has. That's the home state team. But trusting the quarterback room at the University of Texas, playing with guys like Arch Manning, Trey Owens, and others to go along with the Sark system that already sells itself, the established offense that Texas already has and has proven to have that Miami has yet to do under Mario Cristobal and for the last 20 years. I think Texas wins out in that recruitment. Khalil Lockett. I think we went out on Khalil Lockett. This will probably come down to Texas, Alabama, maybe A&M. Maybe it'll be an in-state battle. He's the number 3 receiver in America, number 17th overall player. I think he's leaned Texas for a while. It's been a tougher battle, but DeCorian Moore currently still being committed to Oregon and others being committed to some of these other competing programs in the country. I think Khalil Lockett, the in-state ability to go along with the things I just said with Jamie French, the quarterback room at Texas, the system at Texas, to go along with his skill set. I think Khalil Lockett's going to choose the Longhorns. And then here's where two guys may choose different programs. Michael Terry, on the other end, the athlete, they got him rated as the number 1 overall athlete as well. I don't really understand that because I think Jonah Williams is the number 1 overall athlete. They just have On3 has Jonah Williams rated as just the number 1 overall safety, so I guess they just view him as a safety. But if you view him as a guy that could potentially play on both sides, he would be the number 1 overall athlete. I digress. Michael Terry, still that type of player, number 28 overall player in the country. I think that this might be Alabama, might be A&M. I don't know. I just haven't had any reports that are going out of their way to pick Texas right now. And then Michael Fusasi. I personally think he's going to commit to Texas. So right now I think Texas gets 4 out of 5 verbal commitments. And yet I will not be shocked at all if Oklahoma, in their desperateness to get a player like Michael Fusasi right now with a depth chart that probably paves a path to quicker playing time for Michael Fusasi than he would at Texas, they might get a verbal commitment from him at Oklahoma before we do. But they're my next topic, and I'll give you plenty of reasons why I think that'll flip. And ultimately, Michael Fusasi is going to be a Longhorn. He's going to sign with the University of Texas and play his career at the University of Texas. So at the very least, out of Jonah Williams, Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, Michael Terry, and Michael Fusasi, I think 4 or 5 of these end up playing for the Longhorns when it's all said and done. And that's why on my last show, I told everybody to relax when the Longhorns lost some recruiting momentum in the summer. That recruiting momentum in the summer is just that. It's only momentum. And the season's going to play out, and these guys will make their decisions from between December to February. And ultimately, a verbal commitment is cool for a couple weeks for the fan bases to brag about, get excited about. It gives your team some momentum, but you would much rather them wear that Longhorn helmet and the Texas across their chest when it's all said and done than to get a June, July, August verbal commitment and a cool graphic from Hayes Fawcett. So everybody at the Longhorns recruiting, relax. I think we're still in play for every single target on our board, and we're going to get most of them. So that's my Longhorns camp conversation, 30 minutes of that. Let's move on. Actually, no, I'm going to finish that with that recruiting thing right there. Ultimately, Sark and his staff have established a culture, which I've said multiple times, that speaks for itself. And everything that you can negatively recruit about Texas is all but dead. And if the Longhorns have the season I'm predicting that they win the conference, they go on to either win a national championship or be in that conversation to the very end of it with Heisman finalists, award finalists through every position across the roster, across both sides of the ball pretty much. Everything that you can negatively recruit Texas over the last 15 years is officially dead. Texas is no longer in a conference that you can negatively recruit. We're now in the SEC. Texas can now weaponize their money and pay players, which they never were able to before in the modern NIL era. So we can weaponize our resources, not only with the funding and the money that we have to pay our players, but we can weaponize our resources in every single other way, which boosts our recruiting. And then also on the field, we are consistently winning. Last year, we've won a conference. You can't say we haven't done that. We went to the playoffs. You can't say we haven't done that. And if we repeat that success and win the big bad SEC, it's over for everybody. And that's where you see the fear around the country, and the negative speak and talk about Texas comes from a place of people subconsciously understanding that if and when the Longhorns go and have the season we're expecting them to have and bring in yet another top 3 recruiting class, conservatively speaking, if not the number 1 recruiting class in the country, there is going to be nothing you can do to stop this freight train of momentum that the Longhorns are having to take over college football. And that's the last thing I'll say about Texas. Let's move on to our hated rivals, Oklahoma. All right. I'll start off by saying either the entire world, the odds makers, talking heads, former players, former coaches that do exactly what I'm doing, either we're all wrong and the world is wrong and the smartest football minds in all of the football world exist in Norman, Oklahoma, or the world is right and Oklahoma is just going to be mid at best. And their fan base and people that are in an uproar are just biased and don't want to believe the reality that may be coming within the next 3 to 4 months. All right. So let me tell you something. I'm going to bring it up on the screen. I got the FanDuel odds pulled up. You might be able to barely see it, but Oklahoma has a 7.5 over-under game win total, right? And if you're taking the over, your odds are going to be minus 105. If you're taking the under, your odds are minus 115. So FanDuel in itself gives a 53.5% implied probability that they're going to go under 7.5 wins. That means that FanDuel believes that there's a bigger chance and slightly favoring it, but they're slightly favoring the odds that think that Oklahoma will win 7 games or less this year, rather than favoring the odds that they will win 8 or more. And so when guys like J.D. Pickell, Shonee Jackson, Josh Pate, whoever else, just name them, go and predict things like Oklahoma will go 6-6, I predicted this 3 months ago. I did it before I even saw their over-under win total. I did it just going through their schedule and predicting their wins. And I challenge you, whether you're an Oklahoma fan or just a fan of anybody in general, and you're sitting there saying, oh, what do odds mean? They got to play the game. Go take 10 random teams, look at their schedules, predict their win-loss total without doing any research, without looking at their win-loss over-under total on FanDuel or any sports book. Go project 10 random teams, look at their schedule, project their wins and losses, then go look at the over-under win total and tell me you don't come within a game between at least 7 of 10 of those predictions. There is a reason those chandeliers in Vegas are so beautiful and hang so high. There's a reason they print money in Las Vegas, Nevada. These odds are made by models and computers. They're not made by Texas Longhorn fans. They're made by models and computers that run thousands and thousands of simulations with thousands and thousands of variables that go into all of these games that Oklahoma's going to play. And they come out with a record prediction. And that's where FanDuel, DraftKings, Caesars Sportsbooks, you name it, comes with their over-under win totals. So when those things are projecting Texas to win the conference or to win 10.5 games or whatever you decide, they're doing the same thing with them as they are you. And they're seeing a roster that's a lot deeper at the University of Texas than it is at Oklahoma, or a lot deeper at Alabama, at Ohio State, at Oregon, at Georgia than they are at Oklahoma. And you guys, with your Norman meathead stupid person goggles that you guys have on, see 10 wins no matter what. And you're talking about what Baker Mayfield did, what Bob Stoops did, what, close your ears, earmuffs, Oklahoma fans, what Lincoln Riley did. And you're saying, surely we're just going to keep doing the same thing. What's the other thing you say? Oh, we won 10 games last year. Sark didn't win 10 games in year 2. Let's see if Brent Venables wins 10 games in year 3. Let's see if Brent Venables wins his conference in year 3 like Steve Sarkisian did. Let's see if he goes to the playoffs in year 3 with more chance to do so in a 12-team playoffs. Does he even sniff it? In year 3, Sark got to the 14 playoff in year 3. Let's find out. Oklahoma lost 7 offensive linemen with prior starting experience going into this season. Not 5, 7. They lost every single player that had starting experience from a season ago off of their roster. And more importantly, they lost their favorite player on their entire team from a year ago in Caden Green. Remember the 4-month Oklahoma Twitter experience of Caden Green shut down T'Vondre Sweat, which is just a fucking lie? T'Vondre Sweat had the best game of any interior defensive lineman that played Oklahoma did a season ago. He had like 2 reps against Caden Green, and they didn't fucking matter. But it doesn't matter. I digress. Caden Green just chose to leave on his own and went home to Missouri. Caden Green chose Missouri over Oklahoma, just like others have, and are going to continue to do so. The Bob Stoops Big 12 punk pussy scheduling that Oklahoma did for 20 years is dead. And it's over. You guys lost 7 offensive linemen with starting experience going into your first year in the SEC, a conference that produces more NFL defensive linemen than any other conference in America. All right? That's what people are looking at when they predict the 6-6 record for Oklahoma. You know what else they look at? You got a redshirt freshman quarterback, his first year starting going into the SEC without any offensive lineman of starting experience. And the one game we have to watch him, he had about 30 turnover opportunities. I think he turned it over 5 times, if I recall, and lost to an Arizona team. I know he was a freshman, but remember, you guys said he was the best freshman in his class. That included Arch Manning and Nico Amalamala at Tennessee, who you guys play this year. Right? Let me tell you something, guys. 5-star quarterbacks, they hit and get drafted at a 50% rate. Arch Manning and Nico look across the country to people that are in the know and know what they're talking about like they're for sure going to hit. And both guys are on a roster currently that favors them and gives them a bigger opportunity to hit than Jackson Arnold does. Hate to break that to you, but one of these 5-stars in this class isn't going to be what we thought they would. When I look at Jackson Arnold and his inability to process things faster, and that's just a fact off of what I've seen from high school to now, and I challenge anybody to watch film with him from high school to now. Watch film with me on Jackson Arnold. Any of you meathead dummies at Oklahoma, let's watch every snap of his from high school to now, and I will explain and articulate to you in ways that you fucking can't on why he can't process shit fast enough, and he needs to improve that very quickly, or he's gonna fail at Oklahoma. You guys trust your weapons. I think you got some good ones, but the rest of the SEC does too. I have people tell me, if the Longhorns can go reload in the portal, and Georgia can go reload in the portal, and Ohio State can go reload in the portal, why can't Oklahoma? They can. You're just not reloading with as good as players as those teams are. You guys got a receiver that the Longhorns passed on, and you're glazing his pecker every single day. He's a good player. He was a great player at Purdue. He's a good player. But the Longhorns chose Isaiah Bond and Matthew Golden over him. That's not hyperbole. That's a fact. Can Denzel Burke go be a better player than those? Do the games have to be played? Yes, they do. But those guys are playing with arguably the best offensive line in America, with the best running game in America, with maybe the best quarterback in America. Denzel Burke is playing with a first-year quarterback, with a first-year offensive coordinator, and an offensive line with all brand new starters. Are we crazy to say we're unsure about Oklahoma? Is it really crazy? Or do you guys have one of the most sensitive fan bases in America? It's not over. I'm not done talking. What about the brutal schedule? Let's bring that over-under win total, 7.5. And let's bring back up the schedule. You open up Temple, Houston, Tulane. I think you lose to Tulane. Mario Williams revenge game. Shout out Mario Williams. I'm sorry about Lincoln Riley, and I'm sorry about Oklahoma. I wish I could have advised you when you were making your decision. But I think he's going to have a good year at Tulane. I think Tulane is going to be a very frisky football team. And when I talk about the things I talked about, I know that you Oklahoma fans think you have the 85 Bears defense. I don't. I think you have a good defense. I don't think it's the best defense in the nation. I don't think it's the best in the conference. I don't think it's the second best in the conference. I don't think it's going to be better than the Longhorns. But I'm biased, so maybe it will be. Maybe it will be. But unless it is, I mean, if it's not, you're in trouble. I think you lose to Tulane. I think you lose to Tennessee and Auburn. But these three games right here, Tulane, Tennessee, and Auburn, are the most important on your schedule. Because I know this is a rivalry game with Texas. And everybody around the world understands that rivalry games are rivalry games. And they could go either way. But you're not going to win Texas, Ole Miss, Bama, Missouri, LSU. I think at best you go, was that 4 games? 5 games? At best, you go 2-3 in those games. At very best. So it is important, if you're going to win more than 7 games this year, that you go undefeated in your non-conference and you beat Tennessee and Auburn. These 2 games right here, September 21st and September 28th, against Josh Heupel, the last quarterback to win a national championship for Oklahoma before 9/11 happened, his Tennessee Volunteers, and another 5-star quarterback that came out of the same class, was rated higher than Jackson Arnold for a reason. You got to win that game at home in Norman, and you got to win the game on the road in Auburn, Alabama. If you do not, you're going to be a 5-win or 6-win football team, and there is no other way around that. And if you lose 3 straight games going into the University of Texas, and Quinn Ewers and the Longhorns go and mollywop y'all's ass, 1, you're never going to hear the end of it from Shonee Jackson. And 2, you guys are going to be in a meltdown over giving Brent Venables an extension for no fucking reason at all. And he'll be in year 3 with a 2-4 record going into playing South Carolina, your former special teams coach. And that's a tricky game too, because they might have a better quarterback than you do this year. I don't know. They call me biased. They say I just hate Oklahoma. They say, all these things. You know what else I hear from a lot of Oklahoma fans, including the one I do a podcast with? How could Texas just have one good season in the last 15 seasons and now all of a sudden they're a great program? Let me tell you something. People aren't looking at Texas and saying they're a great program because they had one good season and just expect that to continue. They look at Texas and say they might have 35 NFL football players on their roster. That's why I think they're going to continue to be good. That's the difference that the Oklahoma fans and the meathead idiots in Norman refuse to process through their skulls. Get it between your ears. It's not just Quinn Ewers. It's not just Steve Sarkisian. It's not just the new receivers. It's not just the weapons. It's not that. It's the depth of the roster that goes on 30, 35 deep. You can lose a starter and have another all-conference caliber player at Texas. You lose certain starters at Oklahoma, you guys might not win another game. The Oklahoma program going into year 3 under Brent Venables is in trouble. Because if you in year 3 with your coach, year 1 in the SEC, already up against it resourcefully against teams like Texas, Georgia, Bama, LSU, in your fucking conference alone, you're up against it with your coaching staff, in my opinion. If you go 6-6, year one in the SEC, year three with your coach, I don't know how you climb out of that hole anytime soon, because you're up against it with the superpowers of college football ready to negatively recruit you and bury you. So, pray that my 6-6 prediction isn't right. Pray that JD PicKell's 6-6 prediction isn't right, and pray that it's not just bias delusion coming out of Norman, Oklahoma, and the rest of the world is actually just stupid and doesn't see what I guess you guys see within your program. Because it's a lot of uncertainties, maybe more uncertainties than any other team in this conference competing. I'm hard pressed to ever be convinced that this team can win 10 games with this schedule and with all the things I just listed. A brand new offensive line, a new quarterback, a new offensive coordinator. Let's move forward. Oklahoma had a quarterback last year that's playing for one of the teams predicted to compete for the national championship. His name's Dillon Gabriel. Dillon Gabriel is my number one time to get a real job quarterback in America. He's going into, I think, his 15th year of college football. Therefore, he has stats that are better than every other quarterback in college football. And oftentimes I hear, why is Dillon Gabriel not having better Heisman odds than Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck? Hasn't he done more than them? No, the fuck he has not. Okay? I don't care that he's played 17 seasons of college football and he has 30,000 passing yards and 700 starts. I don't care about any of that shit. That's why I said he's the number one time to get a real job quarterback in America. Dillon Gabriel had a good season last year from an efficiency standpoint. He had an 87.0 QBR. That was the fourth best in America. That is what he is. Dillon Gabriel, he is a good quarterback. He's an experienced quarterback. You can trust Dillon Gabriel to take care of the football, and you can trust Dillon Gabriel to take the roster as far as it can take him. But the problem I have with him is he's in a conference this year where you're going to meet your match multiple times this season. Let me talk about the toughest games Dillon Gabriel is going to have. He gets Ohio State in Eugene, Oregon. That is the best defense in America. All right, let me go back to Dillon Gabriel and pull up his splits. Let's go to the game log. Who are the best defenses Dillon Gabriel played a year ago? Texas probably being the best, number one. Let's just go with that game and that game alone. He goes 23 of 38 for 285 against Texas with a 60% completion percentage and one passing touchdown. The difference in this game for Dillon Gabriel was his 113 rushing yards. He had a 44-yard run on a QB draw where he went untouched for 44 yards. That is basically what makes up all the rushing yards. And that, the 113 and the 44 long, is the reason he had a good game at all. When you go to that last drive of the game against the University of Texas, Dillon Gabriel was pedestrian. He had like a 53% completion percentage going into that last drive, or it maybe had been like 55. Very pedestrian. And under 250 passing yards going into that last drive of the game. Quinn Ewers 100% was a better quarterback than Dillon Gabriel was that day. And that's the case every time throughout Dillon Gabriel's career when he plays an elite defense. Dillon Gabriel started his career at UCF for a reason. Okay? Dillon Gabriel is a poor man's Sam Ehlinger. Everybody talks about, well, it's because his size. He's 5'11", 204 pounds. That's why he's not going to play in the NFL. When has that stopped the NFL in the last 10 years? There's 5'11 quarterbacks that have won Super Bowls. Russell Wilson. There's Kyler Murray, got drafted number one overall. He might be 5'9". He sure as fuck ain't 5'11". I've stood next to him. I'm 5'11". He might be 5'9". He was the number one overall pick in the NFL draft. He's not going to get drafted in the NFL highly or at all, not because he's 5'11". It's because he's not good enough and doesn't have the skill set and never will have the skill set and talent of a Quinn Ewers, even a Carson Beck, and other guys he's going to play this year. Thing is, he's playing a guy kind of like him and Will Howard at Ohio State, and yet Ohio State's going to have the best defense in America, like I said. So I think Dillon Gabriel's really going to struggle against Ohio State. Right? And then the other tough game on that schedule, I mean, I'm sure a few others will bother him and be tough. It's a tough conference. And you're going to have a lot of cold football games and what have you. Obviously, Michigan. Michigan's defense, elite. could compete with Ohio State's defense. Michigan has the best defensive line in America, and they have an elite secondary to go along with it. That combo usually makes things very, very hard on a quarterback. Is Dylan Gabriel going to go have a 300-yard game in this pussy-ass offense that Oregon runs? Screen left, screen right. His completion percentage will be very high this year like Bo Nix's was last year. He'll have a very high completion percentage. He'll play very efficiently. The Boo, whatever the guy's name is, Boo Hairborough or whatever, the playoff committee guy that came on and, have you guys seen Bo Nix's completion percentage this year? Every fucking week when we were screaming our heads off, like Oregon shouldn't be in this, Oregon shouldn't be in this, Bo Nix shouldn't be the Heisman Trophy winner, Bo Nix sucks. When everybody in the world that knows football was screaming their heads off and Boo, whatever his ass name is, was jerking Bo Nix off week in, week out. Yeah, that might happen with him if he has a good record. He's going to have a good completion percentage. He's not going to throw the ball more than 20 yards down the field against any good defense this year. Right? Michigan's going to give him problems. Michigan's going to beat Ohio State again this year. Sorry to tell it to you. They're going to meet them at the worst time, and they're going to lose in Ann Arbor, Michigan in the Big House. Same way they have. Crying Ryan Day is going to go crying somewhere else. Maryland, I don't know. Wisconsin, in Madison, Wisconsin at the end of the year. Luke Fickell, week 2. Probably going to be a freezing cold game, I would imagine, in year 2 under Luke Fickell. I haven't dove into the Wisconsin Badgers program, but I bet their defense is pretty fucking good. So we're going to see. And then Washington to finish off the year. But that's the Oregon schedule. And I can just predict it real quick off the top of my head with variables that I look at, what I think is going to happen. I don't want to say this is going to be my final Oregon prediction, but my premature Oregon schedule prediction: Idaho win, Boise win, Oregon State win, UCLA win, Michigan State win. I think Oregon's got a good enough roster and a good enough coaching staff where they are going to win all the games where they're just have the superior talent, and they will overwhelm people with talent. Guys like Evan Stewart, Jabbar Muhammad, players all across the field that Oregon has. They'll overwhelm those teams that I just mentioned with talent, but they're going to lose in Eugene, Oregon to Ohio State. Then they're going to go win against Purdue. They're going to go win against Illinois. They're going to lose against Michigan. They're going to win against Maryland. And they're going to win a close game in Wisconsin, Madison, Wisconsin, and beat Washington. So I got them losing 2 games only to Michigan and Ohio State, and that's okay. But that's exactly what they've been this last 3 years. And if they're going to take that next step, the thing that I believe is holding Oregon back from national champion to just being on the brink of contending for that and even conference championships is their QB philosophy that they've had. They go Bo Nix to Dylan Gabriel. These old quarterbacks that are good, reliable, like I mentioned, but can't take that step forward of being the elite of the elite. And if you don't have the elite of the elite, and you're in the current Big Ten SEC structure with conference realignment in the NIL world of college football, I'm hard-pressed to think that you're going to win a national championship, again, unless you have the 85 Bears defense. You know what I mean? With this 12-team playoff, quarterback play already separates itself. The rules of the game allows quarterback play to separate itself, these play callers to separate itself. You got helmet comms now that eliminate signal stealing and other things, going to make it harder on the defense. You know, call me what you want to call me, but I'm very hard-pressed to think that Oregon can win the Big Ten or the national championship, regardless of recruiting momentum, regardless of the unlimited NIL fund, regardless of how cool Dan Lanning is and how good of a coach I and others think he is and is going to be. I just don't think that they can win that conference or a championship with Dylan Gabriel as their quarterback. And last thing I'll say, Dan Lanning, love the guy, great coach, maybe a thorn in my side in some ways as a Longhorns fan, but that fucking sociopathic smile he does in every interview creeps me the fuck out, doesn't it? Does it creep you guys out? He looks like a fucking sociopath in every interview. He's very nice. Seems like a cool guy. Obviously, people get along with him, but he smiles like he's fucking Jeffrey Dahmer. I don't know. Weird thing that he does. Let's move on to another quarterback. My dark horse Heisman favorite as of today. Every year I go into the season, and if I make wagers, I do, on Heisman futures, I make 2. I make the one on the guy that I think is going to win the Heisman with good odds, and this year that's clearly going to be Quinn Ewers. I've been very vocal about that. My next guy, the one I'm going to go with the dark horse with better odds, where I would make some more coin, sprinkle that. It's going to be Cam Ward out of Miami. Cam Ward this year transferring to Miami out of Washington State. Let's talk about him. He started his career at Incarnate Ward in San Antonio. Let's pull it up. Incarnate Ward, a West Columbia, Texas player. Shout out to West Columbia. Shout out to Cam Ward. He started his career at Incarnate Word, started as a freshman in 2020, 2,200 passing yards, had a freshman season, right? Goes on and has a massive season in 2021. I'm going to imagine this is probably the best season any quarterback's ever had at Incarnate Word. 4,600 passing yards, 47 touchdowns, sacked 33 times. A natural thrower of the football. His running game's not really an element. And then he transferred in 2022 to Washington State. 320 completions, 497 attempts, 64.4 completion percentage, 3,200 passing yards. The next year's completion percentage goes up to 66.6. That's a crazy number. 37.35 passing yards and 7.7 yards per completion. That's a much better number to acknowledge there. 7.7 yards per completion, 7 interceptions. Let's flip that juju around. But anyhow, I like Cam Ward a lot. I like him at Miami. Like I said a year ago, 3,700 passing yards, 25 touchdowns to 7 interceptions, 65.2 QBR at Washington State. Wazoo. Obviously, Wazoo doesn't even have a conference anymore, really. It exists, but there's 2 teams in it. He transfers for good reason. He played great, man. He played good against good teams. Let's talk about Oregon, the number 9 team in the country. 34 for 48 for 438 passing yards, a 70.8% completion percentage. Oregon was so much better roster-wise than Washington State was. It's not even fucking funny. And that's why I look at these games more than I look at season totals, touchdown totals. How do you play against the best defenses you play? He played admirably against Oregon, more than admirably, with lesser talent, right? Oregon State had a good football team last year. He beat them 38-35, 28 for 34, 404 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, 82.4 completion percentage. That's unbelievable. Cam Ward is a fucking gamer, bro. He is a gamer, and he is a dog. There was that clip. I should have pulled it up. Maybe I will. Hold on. But the clip of him and Shedeur Sanders, him talking shit to Shedeur Sanders at whatever camp or workout that they were at. Let me see if I can just pull up a quick clip of it for you real quick. Here it is.
Y'all bullshit. Y'all bullshit. Well, you know we don't get water. Bullshit, y'all can't handle that heat. That's what it is. It's cool though.
Bro.
That's your team.
Here, bro.
Huh?
You live out here.
That don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing.
You come down where I'm at.
I've been up there. Colder.
You can get water too.
I don't think y'all got better today. I don't think you got better today.
You the
whole reason
we here late. He called you.
I got better. I might have been the reason we was late, but I got better. We throwing comebacks. You just lost it and you placing it. You not throwing it.
Okay.
Come on, man.
If I want a placement, have good accuracy, that's my fault. I'm not just trying to whip it, bro.
Okay.
I went to the river show. We had grabbed the.
I think Conrad got better than what? You got better.
Just a natural competitor, not afraid to be controversial, not afraid for conflict, wants to compete with the guys that are out there. You know what? If you don't think Cam Ward has this chip on his shoulder towards guys like Shedeur Sanders, he looks up every single time you click on your phone, Shedeur Sanders is being talked about. You turn on your TV, he's being talked about. He's on a book tour with his dad. He's going to concerts. He's wearing VVS's and Cuban links. He's doing this, that, and the third. And you know in your head you're better than him. Because, trust me, Cam Ward absolutely believes he's better than Shedeur Sanders. He played Colorado last year, beat him 56-14, 288 passing yards and 2 tutties. You know, I know that he doesn't play. Shedeur ain't playing defense. His brother is 56 points, 2 tutties on his head top. You know what I'm saying? So he goes out there to compete. He goes out there to get better. He's telling him, I'm throwing comebacks. I'm throwing real routes. I'm putting the ball in there. I'm throwing darts. You're just placing throws. You're a placement thrower. That's all you're doing. You're coming here. You're tired because of the heat. You can't handle the heat. Whether or not that's true, whichever side you're on, I don't really care. But he's got the mentality between the ears, and he's a super senior at a program with a lot of talent around him, great skill players around him. The offensive line play is going to be good because his head coach is a phenomenal offensive line coach at Mario Cristobal. right? If Mario Cristobal is going to do the thing in Miami that nobody else has done, if he's going to do the thing that he got hired to do at Miami, then it's going to start this year with Cam Ward. His game against Washington, 24-21 loss, a very close game. He played his ass off. It was a battle between him and Michael Penix. He went 32 for 48, 317, 66.7 completion percentage, 3 tutties and 2 interceptions. That was another team. But the Washington team was just so much better than Washington State, but Cam Ward is playing his ass off. He's a baller, and he's a baller in big-time games with that mentality. Cam Ward, if you are going to look for value on Heisman Trophy odds, I'm going to pull up the Heisman odds for you here. If you're going to look for value on Heisman Trophy odds, you got Cam Ward at plus 1,800. That's $100 to win $1,800. Go sprinkle some cash on Cam Ward. Let's talk about his schedule this year at Miami. They open up the season at Florida. I think they whoop Florida in that in-state battle. Just a lot better than Florida, in a much better position than Florida. Right now, program-wise, Florida's got a quarterback and coach on the hot seat, if you want to look at it. So they go in, they beat Florida, and then they play FAMU, and they beat the piss out of FAMU. They're going to go non-conference 3-0, 4-0. They'll beat South Florida 4-0. Virginia Tech, ACC sleeper this year. Virginia Tech is going to be the first challenge for Cam Ward. So I don't know. I'll decide this. I'm not doing a schedule prediction, but after that Virginia Tech game, we will know a lot. They get them at home. Going in 4-0, he'll have a lot of hype because I think he's going to play really good. And you got a big name in Florida the first week, so eyes are going to be on it. It's an in-state rivalry. If he plays big against Florida, then goes on to dust these teams that he should dust, Cam Ward's going to have Heisman hype and all the eyes in the country on him playing that Virginia Tech team who will probably be ranked at this point. I don't know who they play if they get Florida State or anybody like North Carolina early on. If they get one of those teams and beat them, they could be ranked at this point trying to be a playoff team. Virginia Tech could be a playoff team. So he gets that test Friday, September 27th, early on in the year. And then they go on, play Cal. I would expect them to beat them. Expect them to beat Louisville. Expect them to be better than Miami. And he will outperform DJ Uiagalelei versus Florida State. Gets Florida State at home. So that's a big thing. He has to go to the Swamp week 1, but his big in-conference games and tough in-conference opponents, the two toughest, maybe outside of Georgia Tech, Virginia Tech and Florida State are going to be at home. Florida State's the biggest rivalry. You get them at home, the only time you're going to play them in your career. And then you get Duke at home with Malik Murphy transferring into Duke. Shout out Malik Murphy. You get to play them at home. And then you get these QB battles. You know, you get DJ with Florida State. You get Malik Murphy with Duke. You get the kid that transferred to Georgia Tech from A&M. I'm drawing a blank on his name. Haynes King. So, you know, Haynes King on the road, but those are QB battles. Florida State with DJ, Malik Murphy at Duke, and Haynes King at Georgia Tech. And then you finish the season versus Wake Forest and at Syracuse. Will Syracuse be a factor at all in the season at that point? You know what I mean? So when you're talking Heisman value, you know, Cam Ward's got the talent. He's going to be an NFL quarterback. He could be a first-round draft pick maybe if he has the season that I think he could have. He's got the skill set. He's got the confidence and the mentality to deliver and the swagger. And everybody's favorite word right now, the aura, to become the nationwide Heisman favorite. And not only just from his performance, but part of that's a popularity contest, right? Part of that's going to be a popularity contest. And he's a quarterback, plays the most valuable position. If he's also the quarterback to lead the way to get the U back to being the U and get them in the 12-team playoffs and be considered a competitor in that 12-team playoffs, an ACC champion, dude, who the fuck is going to beat him even if they deserve to beat him? He's going to get all the Heisman votes. So Cam Ward, value-wise, by far the best value pick. If I was going to do another value pick, and I'm not going to talk about it because I've already talked about it, but Cedric Baxter at Texas, he's starting to creep up this list. He's a running back. I know it's a quarterback award, but Cedric Baxter at Texas, if you're going to vote for Ollie Gordon, who is plus 7,500, Ollie Gordon is, you get Cedric Baxter at plus 12,000. So if you put $100 on Cedric Baxter to win the Heisman, you'll get $12,000. I would have to sprinkle $50 on Cedric Baxter. Like I said, best offensive line in America potentially. And he looks like an NFL running back as a true sophomore. Remember what Justin Wells said at Inside Texas at the beginning of the show. He has the lower body frame of a 240-pound running back. You tote that with a great offensive line, there's not going to be a lot of safeties that want to go meet Cedric Baxter when he gets to second, third level. Lots of big-time touchdowns, lots of big-time games that he's playing in. If he has 200-yard games in some of these big games that he plays in, Cedric Baxter at plus 12,000 Heisman odds. So that's it. That's the SJ Show for the day. It's a beautiful day to become a subscriber to the Shonee Jackson Show. It's a beautiful day to follow me on the socials. It's a beautiful day to be you as well. Thanks for tuning in. I love you more than you know, not as much as you think. Y'all have a blessed weekend. 2 shows today, pro and college. God bless. Have a good one. Goodbye.